being a musician or being involved in a club in Liverpool, it's just a series of roller coasters. You know, one minute you'll be having the best year of your life, and the next minute you'll be out of business.
A lot of like inner city development, that's obviously like affecting some of the smaller venues. The best example of that would be the Casimir and the Casimir Garden. I feel like I wish that I'd done a time lapse of that whole process, because it's just so amazing how that was this small little buzz of activity that just got engulfed by these giant buildings.
I think the city centre is starting to feel a little bit more sanitised than it used to be, and that's kind of a result of gentrification, and that's the negative part of it, is that slightly looser, exciting places find it hard to be viable in the city centre. They start to be moved along.
I live in the Baltic Triangle, really close to 24 Kitchen Street, and I know for a while they were having a lot of issues because people were moving into the new flats, then they were making complaints to the council and things, and then there's threats to close these places down.
You know, it's harder to make money out of music these days. It's harder to make money from a venue. You've got the fact that so many developments are popping up and claiming the lands, you know, like student flats, all these sorts of well-publicised things, and licensing's tougher than it's ever been. And, you know, people want more from a night out than they've ever done before, and I think the days of just putting on a DJ or putting on a band and that being enough just doesn't work anymore.
Getting people to come out and spend money, buy tickets to go to gigs, attend gigs, I think, you know, that's ever more challenging in the climate we're in now, sort of, you know, economically in a wider sense, but also in the sense there's a lot more distractions now than there used to be. The internet, you know, there's a lot more options where people can spend their money, so I'd say the biggest challenge is probably just, you know, getting people out to the gigs and getting people enjoying live music.
You know, when you see a gig that's coming up, you're like, oh, I'll just buy a ticket on the door. That doesn't give the venue any confidence that the show is going to do well. It doesn't give the band confidence that the show is going to do well. It doesn't give the booking agent confidence that the show is going to do well. And, you know, a lot of times shows get pulled because of really poor pre-ticket sales before the event. Yet when the event turns up, 100 people come on the door and it's like, why isn't the event on? So we haven't bought a ticket.
Another big challenge that isn't discussed about too much is like the student population, which is a massive benefit for the music scene for about 2/3 of the year, but then when in summer when they're all gone, it's like a real noticeable difference in population, in turnout. A lot of promoters seem to drop off.
Kind of transport infrastructure in and out of the city past midnight is pretty much non-existent. I know there's plenty of people who would come for nights out and gigs in Liverpool if they knew they could get back to Manchester or Sheffield after like 10:30.
I think the main challenge is for any venue is to be different, is to what differentiates you from everybody else, really, because there's a lot of competition out there. And I think, how do you do that? Well, I think you do that by having that intrinsic love, by having that intrinsic kind of motivation for why are you doing this, really. And so you find most people that run venues run it for different types of reasons, really. Of course, they've got to make money to keep the place open. Beyond that, like most of us that are in music, it's for more maverick reasons or for more emotional reasons or for whatever other reason it might be. But I think to be successful and to have survive into, you know, way into the future, particularly in where we're heading, is to have a kind of vision, understand who your audience are, and really to stick to that vision, really.
Because I remember what it was like sticking my head in bass bins at a concert at 17, 18, falling in love, not being able to hear for a week, but walking out of a venue feeling 10 feet tall, telling all your mates, go and buying the album from Probe Records and playing it to death and overturning it till I was sick of it. I do have a big fear that, you know, people will forget these things that make them, you know, what being alive and being in love with music's all about, really.
Liverpool is on the cusp at the minute of really taking off once again, because there's so many artists that are coming out of Liverpool. A lot of the festivals that happen in this city are getting bigger and bigger and bigger every year, and they're getting bigger artists every year.
Things like radio can provide a digital space for the musical community, but we need to protect those independent spaces. They're little meeting grounds, they're little training grounds, they're even homes away from home.
Throughout history, within the cities, the way that it works is the creators come in first and then the kind of money follows, and quite often you see a sector begin to change around that. That's the reality, unfortunately, of the property market. And I think that, you know, there is only so much a city can ever do when there's a private landlord who owns a venue and wants to change its use. So I think for us, it's really about partnership and going forward about working together with the sector rather than feeling like they're a separate entity between the city council and what the city music industry is doing.
So what we try and do as a venue space is we share a lot of information. So, for example, places like Mareki, when they were looking to set up, we share how you get a premises licence, where to get insurance from, how to put together risk assessments. So all of the kind of really boring, uninteresting back of house work, I think the more that we can do to streamline those processes for people so they've got more time to spend on content and networking and how they want to develop their offer.
All kind of comes back to people coming to support local music. It's all well and good buying tickets at £50-60 to see an artist, an arena. It's all well and good, we all want to do that, but ultimately those guys have got to start somewhere, and they've always had a fan base that has started with them.
I think it's going to be the same as it's always been. It's just going to be this cyclical nature, and you know, Liverpool's always going to have venues, promoters, club nights, parties that might last 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, and I just think this constant, relentless evolution is going to continue, and Liverpool's a really nimble, agile city.
If people can get on board and come into these underground shows, into independent venues like here, like the stuff down the Baltic, like anywhere in this city or anywhere in the UK, ultimately the music scene's going to be 1,000 times better because more people are going to it.
The future is like tricky and it's just going to be more struggle. But exciting things do come of that. So there's no crystal ball for me here.
The whole thing is the culture of the city is not defined by L1s and Starbucks and Costas and, you know, every city feeling the same. It's defined by going down to a club that you find is your own personal space where you fall in love with, you know, some lad or girl and you have the best night dancing up and down, taking your top off, getting hot, sweaty. It doesn't matter whether it's dance music, guitar music.
Liverpool is a music city, and one thing you'll never stop is people making the music, and another thing you'll never stop is people who'll want to elevate that music and champion that music through really, really cool venues.